Good morning, it's Vaughan at westcoatbellpottery.ca in Nova Scotia, Canada. It's a gorgeous day outside, and it's Sunday the 13th of October. Back in May this year, I decided, after deliberating for about a year, that we should probably build a new studio up higher on the hill because we have had damage to this building from storms in the past. 9 years ago, it cost us $47,000 to rebuild the wall around the foundation because we're raised up above the ocean on stilts. And when I bought this building, it was kind of something I looked at, and I checked into the historical significance of hurricanes in Nova Scotia, and they can be significant. And I also looked at how often they were and how strong they were. And back in those days, we're talking back 2010, they averaged one every 7 years, and they weren't horrific like Florida just saw. So we kind of thought, well, this building's been here 120 years, it's worth probably risking it. So we did. And we've been here now for 13 years. And we've had that one set of storms in 2015 that cost us $47,000, but generally speaking, it's not been so bad. But last year we had 2 hurricanes, so it changed from one every 7 years to now a lot. So, and they're often. But we thought, with what's happening in Florida now, and we didn't know that a year ago, but basically we decided we ought to try and build another studio higher up on the hill. And it's, of course, sea level rise that you have to worry about too, which is now estimated to be about 1 inch a year. So 10, 11 years, you're still only getting another foot. And I've measured my distance in storms, and I'm about 3 feet above the ocean when the storms hit. So I've got a little bit of play, and but that's still not significant when you look at what they just had in Florida, where they had 10 feet storm surges. So anyway, that's the reasoning behind building this new studio, since I already have a pretty spectacular studio here, but it's under threat. So let's show you underneath the studio now and see why I am a little concerned. I'm underneath the studio. So this is what holds my building up above the water. This diagonal holds up my deck, and that's still there, holding it up there quite nicely, I think. So that's nice to see. So what do I look at the other ones? So these diagonals, the deck is right above me, and they support the deck, which means, and that's just bolted in. It doesn't feel rotten, so I guess that's holding well. And there's another one over there holding that one up. So my guess is these are actually okay at the moment. And that rock wall there in 2015 was demolished, and we had to put these rocks back because the ocean with the waves comes in here and really, did some damage. And the piling over there that holds the corner of the deck up, that has actually given me issues this year, and I had to put that rock and that base back underneath there to actually support it. It's right at the corner, and we moved it a little bit in, but I think that's fine. But this is why I feel like, with what we just saw in North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, storms are a huge issue with the changing climate. So I'm actually about ready to move into a new studio, which will actually give me like an insurance policy against any disaster that might happen. I have to be a little careful down here because there's a family of mink that live underneath in these rocks. So we want to make sure that I don't make those guys unhappy. They can be kind of nasty. But this would be quite the feat if I ever have to repair all this stuff down here if it gave way. in a storm. The original ones are these. One in the middle of the picture there is penciling out. That's why with age these things will give way, and we have to decide whether we want it. That one's actually gone right the way through in there, so that one, you know, we should really talk about getting another one put in there. They're buried in the sand. Oh, look at that one. I would say there's not much holding that one, and there's a beam being held up there as well to the other one. So we have to think that definitely needs to be, and it's basically a tree trunk. The one over there looks in good shape, and there's another one there that's not very good. There's one over there that's got two large ones either side of it, so my guess is that one, it probably doesn't even need to be replaced. Oh, there's one over there right at the edge. That is completely penciled out. So we got some stuff we have to consider. After this winter, we're probably going to need to do some repairs. But there it is. That's what holds my building up in calm weather and horrible weather. And when the tide gets really high, the actual water is almost touching the floor of that deck. So it's high tide. That's why I think I'm only 3 feet above sea level in a really bad storm. The floor of the building is probably at the top of that deck area, maybe just a touch higher. The deck is a little bit lower than the floor of the building. Anyway, now you got the idea of why I'm building a new studio. But the backhoe is here, and they're going to start excavating to see where they can put the building. Rock and soil in Nova Scotia is not optimal for anything, especially agriculture, because there's only a very thin layer of soil, maybe 6 inches to a foot on the surface of rock in Nova Scotia. So as you can see here, that little thin line of soil on the top, and then it's just solid rock underneath. So after they dug my little hole, they're now putting the footings for the foundation in. This is basically a frost wall, and then after that's poured, we'll get to do the rest of the floor. Here, because we've got so much water coming down the hillside, they're putting a French drain all the way around the perimeter of the actual frost wall to get rid of any moisture that will get inside there. We're also going to put a drain in the center of the building so that we can get water that would come into that little sort of center area and get that out as well. Of course, to make sure we've got really good drainage, now they're pouring gravel all the way around that French drain so that the water will seep through very easily and get into the pipe to get an exit. When I went back down to the studio and came up a few hours later, this was done, and put this insulated concrete form, which is now going to be filled with concrete, and this is the frost wall basically, so that we don't get any moisture in this area, and also the cold is kept out. And now they're going to pour the concrete by wheelbarrow load into each of those blocks. And that's going to be a 6-inch concrete block with the 3 inches of foam either side of it. So the gravel has been filled up quite a bit on the inside, and they put the rebar in as they were pouring the concrete, and that's to hold the next layer of blocks that will go above that. And it's basically ready now to have another layer of gravel put on, which gives you a really good thick floor. So we're putting walls up today, and just for the lower floor with the ICF, and then basically sometime in 2 or 3 days time maybe they'll pour the first layer of concrete down the lower level. This is a different angle from it, so you can see it's all coming together just like a Lego building. So the windows are all cut in now. So things are developing pretty fast now. We've got some window shapes going in. That's the rough end for the windows on the lower level. So as you can see, it's big windows all the way across. There's the new building. Now I assume what happens is they come and pour concrete in the middle of the walls between the styrofoam. This is the cross section of the actual wall with the concrete going through the middle there. These are all the structures, I assume, to hold it up while they're pouring concrete. So now they're from that large cement mixer with that big boom that goes up high, they pour the concrete in between all of these concrete forms. So you get a 6-inch thick concrete wall with 3 inches of styrofoam either side of it. And they've got a pretty precise job here to make sure everything fits together nicely when you put the windows in here with all the framing that goes with those. So this is the engineered floor that's got to go on the ceiling of the bottom story. What they're doing now is putting, I think they're 2x10s or 2x12s. So that's what the little floor joists look like, is called an engineered floor, because it's 18 feet across. It's too far for regular joists. So getting a lumber delivery these days is a lot easier than it used to be in the old days. Just with this boom truck, they can just lift it and put it anywhere they want. I guess you could drop it right in the middle of the building, or this time it's going slightly to the back and the side. Okay, we have a side wall up and the front wall up, and I think by the end of the day we may have all 4 walls up. So now we are getting the trusses put on, and today we'll see the actual size of the building in reality, I guess. So the front side is now protected from the weather with plywood, and so tomorrow they're going to come and do the back side as well. One of the major problems about being on a hillside is that water drains down. So we've got to make sure that the water does not come into this foundation of this new building. So I'm going overkill here, but I'm digging drainage ditches all the way around the edge of the property. Okay, so this is the strapping on the ceiling. inside the lower level of the studio. There's the vents for the kiln eventually and the wood stove. They've got the insulation here. They've done some plumbing work. I'm just using rainwater, but we have a couple of nice drains there. So I can actually use rainwater in this studio, and which I will recycle. And we have, in case of flooding in the building because of heavy rain, I'm going to be able to get the water out off the floor here, just in case something happens. But this is getting close to, floor gets poured this week. This is the upstairs. So a lot of the plywood and some wall insulation and various stuff is here. I think that's floor insulation there. And they're doing strapping here on the ceiling as well. So this will become Jackie's dream painting studio for large canvas paintings. We're using these big boulders, little accents on the left and right side of the building. These ones have been placed by that backhoe excavator right here. So we'll have some steps to the back of the building where there's an access door, and then this is the studio building entryway here. And the concrete floor gets poured next week. Okay, this was a Sunday they did this, but it's quite a surprise. But they put in the pipe work, plastic pipe that will carry the hot water in the floor to heat the floor down here, and that's a lot of piping.
Yeah, they're not falling. You alright?
Yeah, I'm good.
There, secure it down.
So this morning we had a plumber, an electrician, and the backhoe guy in, excavating, digging more trenches, drainage, putting me a trench from the house over to the building because we need internet cables. And then we've got a water line put in because the in-floor heating needed water. And we were going to tap into my well that's above the building, but we couldn't find the pipes. So we are now just going to feed off the house, which we don't need running water in here. I'm going to do everything through rain barrels, but we will have, just behind the door there's a little water line for where a sink will be, but there will be no sink release from water, just like my studio. I recycle everything, and there's 2 pipes coming up from the driveway there behind the ladder. So all the infrastructure has to be put in here before you pour concrete. You've got to have an air exchanger in a building that's this tight. Even though I'm going to have 2 fans blowing out the building, they won't always be blowing, so you need to make sure you don't get condensation in the building. These black things sticking up are going to pour concrete in. They're about 3 feet high, so that we can have a deck on the back of the studio here, so Jackie has access via steps to a little deck and then gets into her door at the back. So as they pour the concrete down with a wheelbarrow and spread it out, there's another guy in there who uses a machine that literally vibrates the concrete and just shakes it. It just stick it in there, and then the vibration kind of makes the concrete settle down flat and give you a nice smooth finish. It's pretty amazing to see that. Okay, the floor has been smoothed out and it looks terrific. So now we're just going to have they've been walking on it already, so amazing how fast that stuff sets. The metal roofing is now here, and they order this roofing in the lengths exactly the size of the roof, so that's great. So you don't have any seams going horizontally, it's just the vertical ones. So it's Thursday evening, the 22nd of August, and this building now has a sealed roof. What they're doing here is putting in ductwork and pipework to actually help air basically circulate from the outside of the building to the inside of the building and back to the outside of the building through an exchanger which maintains the heat in the building but changes the air, and that makes sure you don't get condensation buildup in a very tight building like this. This is the lower floor in the building, so this is the actual pottery, and this is the ductwork in the ceilings that will actually do the air exchanging downstairs as well to make sure we don't get condensation. And the air exchanger is actually going to be positioned between my damp cupboard and my spray booth, which will be right there. This is where they're starting to put the cedar shingles on the outside of the building. The front will have all cedar shingles, and we actually decided to do clapboard on the other three sides, because that's exactly what the gallery building looks like. The side door on the right hand side of the building is too close to the rock wall here, so we're moving everything back to actually excavate it, so my doorway will be a little bit easier to get in and out of. And the drainage ditch goes right alongside there, so we don't want to get any water draining from the ditch back into this open space. So this is the side door. It's kind of like my escape door opposite where the kilns will be. I thought it'd be advisable to have two doors on the lower level where the kilns are. And this is basically the insulation. They decided to use just the sheets of fiber, I suppose it is, and rather than blow-in cellulose. But that's a lot of manual positioning and doing a vapor barrier to protect it, so you've got to put all these plastic sheets up to hold it, and it's just going to be a very cozy building. We're getting ready. The upstairs is going to be sheetrocked on Monday, and then down here then they're going to clean up this space on Monday, and they've got my walls in for the damp cupboard. The fan is there for airbrushing, and then everything electrical is finished. And it's just a matter of putting plywood up on the walls where I want to put shelves, because ICF is just foam. So we're going to put plywood in all these narrow areas here. Not on the top, you don't need it, but we'll do it because it's going to be the same level then. But in the middle of every area, you'll have a piece of plywood where I can fasten shelves. And then basically over there, I'll probably have some plywood put up so I can actually do shelves there too. So we've got all of the insulation in and what they call a vapor barrier, and today they started to put sheetrock on. So we've got sheetrock up all the way around the upstairs. So everything's covered up now, and next week they'll come in here and throw a bunch of mud on it and sand it down a few times. Usually do that 3 times. It is the 9th of October, and we started this project the first or second week of June. So we have moved along pretty fast. We now have all the mechanicals in place. Wood stove exit and vents for the kilns up there, and what looks to me like should be in a industrial museum. What a nice plumbing job that guy did. And then over there we've got the Wi-Fi and water lines over there, and everything is painted. So I've even started measuring for tables today, and there's my fan for my airbrushing, which will be outside. I'll have a big spray booth built around that, which I will do a video on showing you how I do it, because I actually do it with many filters to make sure that nothing really gets out. Air exchanger, and my state-of-the-art damp cupboard. Not quite finished because the trim around the window isn't done up there, but this is sealed and it will be corked, and it's a plastic sheeting, a laminate plastic that's on the walls, so nothing will be able to escape as far as moisture. That'll be a luxury. And I'll cork down there on the floor too, so the air won't seep in at the bottom. But this downstairs is, you know, what is that month? June, July, August, September, 4 months. We have a new building, a new studio. So this is Jackie's painting studio, right above my pottery studio. And everything is painted up here now. So the top coat's on and everything. It's the square footage in here is about 675 square feet in this upstairs space. So the inside, with a little echo with nothing in there, is looking really nice. So the nice thing about ICF construction, actually have 12-inch almost deep windowsills. These are actually 10.5 inches. Because of the window width, I guess. But so I am going to have nice plants all winter long in my new studio. And of course, some of these may not look quite as pretty as this after they lose their flowers, because they won't flower during the winter probably, but they will start flowering in the end of March, probably early April next year. And this is where my potter's wheel will go, right here, looking down at the old studio, so I can watch if we get customers in there, and just give me lots of exercise walking down the hill. And I will actually have a small sink here, which will be nice. I don't have that in my old studio, but and then all the mechanicals are over there. The kilns will be here. There'll be 2 kilns. I'm still trying to decide what type to get. There'll be a wood stove right here too, and then shelving all along here for storage of work. And then there's my built-in damp cupboard and my spray booth to the right, which I will be building and showing you how to build a spray booth that can pretty much be stop anything from going outside. I've been meaning to do a video on that, but this is sealed plastic. This is Jackie's painting studio. So she's got a heat pump in this room for heat. But this room is just got to have the floors vacuumed and then painted, which will be done this week as well. And all the outlets have to go on as well too. Well, the contractor told me he's finished. And I've been moving my things in over the last 2 days. And everything that needs to be here is here. That's my damp cupboard, sealed up. And there's the heat pump. The spray booth will get built. I've been putting all of my glaze materials all along the edge of the window there, which I will then seal up with a board across the front, so you don't see the buckets until I actually need to mix glazes. So that will look nice and tidy eventually. So I'm rebucketing some of them, binning some of them. But basically, I've just got to build another table, and then we'll eventually put some kilns in here, slab roller in the middle, 2 wheels either side of the sink, and a trimming wheel sort of at this end, I think. But we'll have that as a working studio before Christmas. Jackie's room is also complete. We have to do a 3rd coat of floor paint. But basically this room is finished. The lighting is all in. 1 more coat of paint on the floor, and then in 3 or 4 days we can walk on it.